Welcome to the Education Innovators Podcast. I'm Eric Byron. This is season 4, and it is my privilege to host this show where I get to talk with thought leaders and experts from all over the world. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started.
That was the subtext across the screen the whole time. Can we make this work? How can we make this work? So those kinds of things happened all along because people, kids, parents said, you know what we really could use, my kid could really use. And as long as it didn't break the back of the teachers, I was like, okay, well, let's try it.
David Bryan may be the humblest education innovator I've ever met. As a founding head of school for a private school in the Los Angeles, California area for almost 20 years, he held on to this, why not philosophy when it came to trying new things and breaking the rules. So his story is both inspiring and entertaining. Keep listening. David Bryan is my guest today, and he is a curious and eager student of many fields, learned from a 50-plus year career in the trades, business, and education. Dr. Bryan has taught at middle school, high school, and university levels at various institutions in the United States. He co-founded New Road School, a unique independent school in Southern California, where he served as faculty member, the founding head of school, and president from 1995 until he left in 2013 to start his own consulting business. So Dr. Bryan, very educated. He's received a BA from the State University of New York at Stony Brook, an MS from the University of California at Los Angeles, and a J.D. and Ph.D. from the State University of New York at Buffalo. Welcome, David.
Hi there. How are you, Eric? Thanks so much for having me here.
Yeah, this is going to be fun because you're also a podcaster.
I sound more educated than I am, actually. So, yes, I am also a podcaster. Right.
Yes, you have a podcast called Curiosity Invited, right?
Curiosity Invited, indeed.
Yeah,
yes.
Which is fascinating for me. I talk a lot about curiosity on this show. So
no kidding.
Looking forward to digging in on why curiosity is your topic. But before we do that, your bio is very impressive, but I want to hear how you describe yourself. So what defines you and your legacy after a 50-plus year career?
Yeah, that's a terrifying number, actually. It's like, wait, how could that possibly be if I'm only 50? How could I have...
Exactly. You started working at 3 years old.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, what I think much of that, not all, but much of those 50 plus years, it wasn't a plan. I mean, sometimes I planned, but it wasn't a plan to have life unfold that way. It was in some ways, following my nose, following my curiosity. You'll excuse the expression. It wasn't a word I used much at the time, but when looking back, that clearly was there. This is going to sound maybe tedious to a lot of people, but I really enjoyed school because it was a place that allowed me, or felt like it invited me, to think about stuff and discover stuff. The college was, I think I was in college because I didn't really have much imagination. And so it was the next step after high school. I didn't imagine something else. I went to college. My parents, I'm not sure what they would have done had I not, but, and I discovered that it was far more interesting than I imagined. And what was frequently interesting was not what was in classes, although some of that was interesting, but was what was in the community. You'd walk by through the student union and on your way to get a yogurt and saw this protest going on, or this lecture happening later on in the day or something. And wow, or staying up late at night in the dormitory and discover. So it started this geez, I don't really know what I want to do. So I kept doing that. It was like, so after school, after college, I applied to law school not because I wanted to be a lawyer. I didn't even really know what being a lawyer was going to look like. And I hated it. And then left and thought, geez, but I really do like school. So maybe I can give it one more try, maybe with something else that I'm interested in. And so I applied to UCLA and the Department of Kinesiology, and I got in, which was crazy. And that was super interesting. And then I worked in that world for a little while.
Sorry, I
And
gotta stop you there. Kinesiology? What?
kinesiology, the study of human movement. And at UCLA, that was exercise physiology, biomechanics, and motor learning, right? How people move. And but I kind of missed the rigor of law school, so I actually returned and then ended up working on sailboats in and out of South Florida and the Caribbean, not because I knew anything about boats, because it was just this meandering. And it was actually one evening, I was sitting in my cockpit of my sailboat after a day's work, and I thought, I wonder what I want to do next. And it was almost like I heard a voice. I mean, I did hear a voice, which was a little scary. It said, well, why don't you teach high school? I was like, oh, I probably by this point in my life, I probably do know enough to teach something in high school. So my family, my remaining family was out in California. So within 2 months, I sold my boat, got rid of most of my stuff, went out to California and started immediately teaching in the LA public schools, Los Angeles public schools. And unbeknownst to me, somebody gave my resume to the head of a school, a private school, which I had never had an experience with a private school. And so I got called. They offered me a job, even though I wanted to work in the public schools. And I got hired in a private school, which was so fun. And
what did you teach?
it's the story of my life. I taught everything. I taught political economy. I taught middle school English and humanities, World Civ. And then I taught a human development class. And then I taught physical education and political economy and law and society. If you can put together something that was interesting for kids, high school, middle school,
Yeah.
then you convince somebody that you can actually do it, you could do it. So I did. And then I developed a relationship with the head of the school, the founder of the school. And we would periodically sort of toss ideas around. And one day I said to him as we were coming back from lunch, I said, this place is really great. And he said, yeah. He said, yeah, it's pretty great. It's not really what I had in mind. I said, yeah, it'd be great if we could open the doors to this place more to people who couldn't necessarily afford it. And he, being the person he is, he like took that seriously and put together a board and came up with a plan for, geez, maybe we could have a school that really could open the doors to families who could not necessarily afford the cost of an independent school or a private school. And so we did. And then he said, you want to be the head of that school? You want to apply for that job? We're going to do a search. And I figured, oh God, they're going to do a search. That's not me, because I've never run a school before. And maybe the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. So they hired me. And almost 20 years later, I stopped, but it was New Road School that you made reference to. And it was fun and fabulous and almost as diverse as the city of Los Angeles, which is historically incredibly diverse. So many different cultures. But you couldn't find that in most of the schools because it's also one of the most segregated cities in the world, right? Economically so. So New Roads was really an effort to see if we could, to put everybody together and also to see if we could use some of the things that alienated people from one another as a way to bring us together, right?
Yeah.
You know, the fact that your skin color is like that and mine is like this seems to keep us apart, and but not there.
Yeah.
And it was fabulous. It was wonderful, and probably still is in
Yeah.
all sorts of different ways. Still going strong, even though I'm long gone.
Yeah.
But
Well, sounds like you gave them a
so,
great
sorry,
foundation.
sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Quite all right. No, it's a great story, and it really helps me kind of understand who I'm talking to and what your
Yeah.
background is. And actually, so this just came up with me this week, a discussion about or somebody suggesting that many teachers become teachers because they were good students,
Mm,
right? They liked school. And so I'm just curious. I wasn't planning on asking this question, but after hearing your story, do you
yeah.
think that's possible that you ended up teaching because you liked school?
Certainly possible. I don't think I thought of myself. I liked that school gave me the freedom to think about stuff and dive into stuff. I um I always chose both institutions and departments that allowed, that had the fewest amount of requirements, because I didn't necessarily want to pursue a particular field. I mean, I went to law school, but I went to law school, but I petitioned to take classes outside the department, outside the law school, because they were interesting. So, and in the institution allowed for that. I didn't like the constraints of school. At the same time, I respected that there were people who were way more experienced and way smarter than me, and they probably knew what was worthwhile for me to look at. I'm not sure they always agreed with how I looked at it, but
Yeah.
I didn't hate school. I didn't hate school, but I wasn't one of those people who like, oh my God, get me the hell out of here. It was, in some ways, it was a social event, it
Right.
was fun,
Yeah.
but
So,
I
well, let's
didn't,
talk about
yeah,
innovation. Obviously, that's the theme of this show, right? Is innovation and
yes, indeed.
education. So, you were 20 years at that school, long
Yeah,
enough,
roughly.
right? Certainly long enough to try some things and maybe do some innovation yourself. But your view on education now, and it was a private school, so you had more freedom, I gather, to kind of do what you wanted to do. So, what did innovation mean there at your school? What did that
Yeah,
look
it's
like?
funny. That's funny. I never thought of, I never thought about innovation, but when I was there, but I definitely, I, I kind of took my direction from young people, from kids. So started as a middle school and then kind of grew upward and downward,
Okay.
and ended up with a K through 12 school. But I took, I don't know, I didn't have a theory about child development. I learned that stuff afterwards if it made sense. I never forget the first week of school. So we opened the school 1995. It was a middle school, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. And we housed it. We rented a boys and girls club that was open. It was a functioning boys and girls club. It was closed. The boys and girls club opened for young people after school. It was mostly an after school place.
Right.
So that means it sat fallow all day long. And we were lucky enough to find a boys and girls club that said, yeah, okay, well, that sounds like an interesting idea to have a school there during the day, and then the boys and girls club afterwards. For them, it was free rent and etc. And so here we were in the boys and girls clubs. You walk in and it's a giant games room, like foosball, pool table, or whatever. And of course, that made when the parents walked in, at first, what the hell is this? And when the kids walked in, it was like, oh, I want to go to that school.
Yeah.
And it was, all this preparation. And here I was, nobody who'd ever run a school before, and set it up and built a schedule and ordered the furniture, all that stuff that you have to do that you never think about until you're starting something. And maybe it was the second day or third day of school. And somebody walked in, it's lunchtime. It's kids are all emptying out of their classes and are going to go to that games room and eat lunch. Couldn't use the games during the day and eat lunch. And in walks a guy from carrying a pizza, two pizzas. And he said, "Yeah, I'm here. Is this a school?" I said, "Yeah, it is a school. You must be making a mistake. It's it's a school that kids." And he said, "No, somebody ordered a pizza." And I said, "No, I think it's a mistake." And this little kid, never forget him, Noah Sloan, he said, "Oh, no, that's mine." A little guy, seventh grade. And I said, "Wait, what?" He said, "Yeah, I ordered a pizza." And I said, and my first response was, "No, absolutely not." And he's like, and he's like taken aback and a little bit scared because, the big scary head of the school was like, and he said, "Well, okay, I'm sorry, but why not?" And it hit me like, I could have just said, "Because I said so."
Right.
But I was like, I looked at him, I said, "Why not?" You know what? I don't know why not. So until I do, you can order pizza, but you can't be late for your next class. And if the guy shows up late, it's on you. It's not on your teachers. It's like,
Yeah.
and it dawned on me that school was often a place that had all these rules that people bumped into that that I'm not sure they were there for. I don't know if anybody ever knew the reasons why most of them were there. And that sort of opened my eyes to, well, wait a second, I'm the head of the school. I can make decisions about those things. So if a kid came up to me and said, I'm really bored in history class. I really hate it. I said, "Well, what would you want to do instead? It's important to learn this stuff." And the kid came back the next day and he had written 2 pages, single spaced, of what he would want to do instead. I was like, geez, if education really made sense for human beings, we would, instead of saying, "No, you have to go to history class," we would say, "How can we make this work?" And I think that was the subtext across the screen the whole time. Can we make this work? How can we make this work? And so started independent study programs, I mean, I remember a woman coming in with her child applying to middle school, and the child was, she was, sorry, a high functioning autistic child. And so, I went through the interview process and it was pretty clear right away. It's like, this kid's different in a way that I don't know. And and I said, "Well, it doesn't really seem like she's gonna fit here." And she said, "Well, she's really smart." I said, I get that. I mean, she really is. And she said, schools are backwards. I mean, I said, "There's got to be schools in LA is a big place. LA's public school system's got so much accommodation." And she said, "But I don't really care if my daughter gets a high school diploma. I care that she's able to like function in the world. And there's no schools that will do that. They're going to insist that she gets through this course and this course." I said, "That can't be." She said, "Trust me, I've been doing this for years. That is." And I said, "That doesn't make any sense. There should be a program like that. So why don't we start one?" And this woman was willing to do the legwork. So we started a small, called it the Spectrum program, for kids who were high functioning kids who could do all the work part, but needed, ask them to do calculus and they could. Ask them to go to the 7-Eleven and get you change, and they couldn't because that interaction between people was just so confusing. So those kinds of things happened all along because people, kids, parents said, what we really could use, my kid could really use. And as long as it didn't break the back of the teachers, I was like, okay, well, let's try it. So it was a series of things like that. We were really like every other high school. that wants to get their kids into college is, you know, you offer as many AP courses as you can. And the teachers would complain about it. It's like, you know, this course is fun. And the kids would complain about it. It was boring. It was like, and I was like, well, could you teach an honors class that was as good as this? Oh, I could teach an honors class. It was way better than this. So I called around to a bunch of probably 60 colleges and universities and told them what, you know, what if we got rid of our APs and did an honors course instead? And, you know, the range of response from the colleges was everything from celebrating because they didn't like the AP program either to disinterest, like whatever, doesn't matter to us, same. And so we got rid of all the APs and had our own honors program. And so those kinds of things happened throughout because it was really about what is it that makes sense in education for these people. So it was an unusual place.
Yeah.
It was an unusual place.
Well, I hate to break it to you, Dave, but what you just described is innovation.
Yes, I get it. I get it now in hindsight.
You get it now in hindsight, right?
Yeah,
You weren't
back then.
trying to innovate, but
I wasn't
but you
trying.
were. And
Right.
it's all about that
Right.
attitude. And I love the way you started it, right? It was student focused, right? What do they
Totally.
need? You know, what
Right.
makes sense for them?
Right.
And yeah, no, that's an awesome story. And I love that you were so kind of humble about the fact that you were being creative and doing these things and, you know, and saying, why not? Right. Because this is exactly what I've been trying to get educators to do with this show, right? Is I'm constantly encouraging people to say, be brave. Why not? What can you do? Right. Don't be stuck and figure you're constrained. Break the rules. Yeah.
The numbers of times I've heard from kids and parents, it actually was amazing, usually in the admissions process, but the numbers of times I heard from kids and their parents that, you know, why were they trying to apply out from the school they were in to the school that they wanted to be in? The number of times I heard because things like, well, because, you know, now I'm in eighth grade, and so you know we have eighth grade math, and I've already done that stuff. I did it in this previous school or my elementary school or something, and so it's just so boring. And there's got to be a class they can put you in that's like, no, they won't do that because I'm in eighth grade, and so I have to be with the eighth graders. The number of times I heard that as if somehow, as everybody's, you know, everybody's like a chair. Everybody is the same.
Yeah.
And the chairs get lined up this way. And no, we can't because you're an eighth grade chair and you're not a seventh grade chair or a ninth grade chair. And so you have to be in the eighth grade room. It's just a bizarre, the idea that that is education and that there's no flexibility. And, you know, I don't pretend to know what it's like to be a public school principal, but, you know, maybe they've got people breathing down their necks in ways that constrain them like that.
Yeah.
And but boy, what a shame, because I know, I mean, I've met so many public school educators who are fabulous, but you know, are in handcuffs. They cannot do, they have to be in the open court reading. You know, on this day in Los Angeles, on this Tuesday in March, this is the page in this book that everybody in the fourth grade has to be on.
Yeah.
My God. Like, really?
Yeah. Yeah. It can be that strict to some degree.
Yeah.
That regimented. All right. So this is
no way to live. It's no way to live on an airline.
Yeah. It's interesting. So let's take a quick commercial break so I can do my plug for the human intelligence movement. Not a paid advertisement. I'm just a fan. So the human intelligence movement is on this mission to ensure that students have the skills to thrive and succeed in an AI world. You should join the movement. Check it out. I've got a link in the show notes. Now back to my conversation with David Bryan. We've got more stories of innovation, creativity, and a contagious enthusiasm for making quality education accessible and adaptable for all students. Let's talk about curiosity. So, because this is, say, one of my themes I believe that curiosity is the key to engagement in school, right?
Sure.
Sadly, I think that whole structured thing of, yeah, and I love that analogy, right? You're an eighth grade chair, so you can only sit in the eighth grade room, right?
That's it.
But what that does, that structured thing that says, today we're going to learn this, not because it interests you or you care, we're going to teach this because my curriculum guide says today we're teaching this topic, right?
Right.
What that does is it kills curiosity, right? The
Oh,
kids are not encouraged to ask questions. They're told you must learn this, and I'm going to test you on this. And so shut up, sit still in your chair, focus, and learn this because I'm the
right.
teacher and I get rules pushed on me that say you got to learn this. And so what we're trying to encourage is more schools to kind of flip that paradigm and say, what do you want to learn? I call it the pull versus the push, right? So
Right.
the push is you need to learn this today,
This is
and
it.
I'm just telling you what you need to know, right?
Yeah.
Content delivered, knowledge acquired, right? As opposed to the pull that's inquiry based, right? It's the student saying, but I don't understand this. I want to know why.
Hmm.
And now, right, they've opened the door, right? And so anyway, so I'm curious about
There you
how
go.
you kind of saw that in your school. And again, maybe it was you didn't put a label on it, but how did you get to kind of inquiry based or more student led interest?
Yeah. Well, I'm are you ready for another complex, convoluted response. I apologize
It's okay.
in advance. I'll stop. I won't apologize afterwards. I'm apologizing now.
Okay.
Uh, that's more complicated because I think it is absolutely true that kids are, until we beat it out of them, kids are curious by nature.
Yeah.
And they're curious about something and they're learning from the moment they get out of as soon as they get out of the box, they're learning,
Yeah.
right? They're learning how to walk, they're learning, and that's learning is our life.
Yeah.
And
Touching,
tenacious.
tasting. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Everything.
they're
Yeah.
tenacious about it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the fact that I fell down this time, that doesn't mean I never get up again, right? No, I'm getting up because that's
Yeah.
what I want to do. So, yes, so and kids don't necessarily know the world that they are going to confront as much as the adults that are in their lives. And so there's this thing of like, I know that even though you hate algebra, math, learning this will open your eyes maybe to more mathematics, but it'll certainly open your eyes to other things about the world that you don't really know is coming because you haven't been there. And like, we know. So there is something that the teacher, right? They have a sort of special knowledge about how to get out, how to get through that door. They know where the door is. They know how to get through that door and into the next room or the next adventure. And so you may not be interested in that right now, student, but my job is sometimes to get you interested in it, get you fascinated, get you curious about this thing that you don't even know is there. So that's a complicated thing. And I hate the word, and progressive educators recognize that a piece of their job is to really go where their students are right now, what they want to learn, how they want to learn, how they best learn, go there and coax them into other things and new things and other ways of looking at things and bringing their amazing intelligence and curiosity into that. So that's a skilled educator. That's a tricky thing. That's why being a progressive educator, I think, is much harder, progressive teacher, than delivering this chapter 4 to the 8th grade on this
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
right? Because that's so much. I mean, it's so much easier. It's just, oh, here we go. And if jump and grab it. And if you can't jump and grab it, well, it's not on me. It's on you. because I threw it, and
Right,
you're
right.
supposed to grab it. You're supposed to jump to the 8th grade level and grab it, and the end. Bad. So recognizing that there is this weird thing, and the other thing about being curious, I actually think it's one of the, I mean, you said it a moment ago, right? I mean, we want them to be curious. We want them to, and somebody's curious when they've got questions about stuff. Or, geez, I wonder how this would work if I pull, oops, you vanished. Oh no, there you are. I wonder how this would work if I pulled this piece out of the bottom of the table. Would that work? And they're curious. They want to know. They ask a question. And school set up so that traditional school, standard school, schoolish school is set up so that the teacher asks all the questions, which is the wackiest thing in the world, right? Because we
Yeah.
want them to question.
Yeah.
And yet I'm the one who asks the questions. Not only that, I'm the one who tells you which are the important questions and which are the questions that you should spend a lot of time on. We build it into everything. We build it into the assignment. This question is only worth 2 points, and that question is worth 25 points or 10 points. And I get to decide which is the important one, as if somehow you might learn the thing that I want you to learn that I know would serve you well. Really open your eyes to all sorts of things. You may learn it from the 2-point question, but I'm going to tell you that's only worth 2 points. So that's not particularly important. It's so crazy. It's so mixed up. And then comes along the age we're living in. We weren't living in the AI world when I was in the middle of that school, but kids, it was pretty much guaranteed that a young person growing up, going through school when we started that school, it wasn't going to be like it used to be. You weren't going to get a job in the factory or whatever and do the same thing for 30, 40, 50 years. That you were going to have different careers. You were going to have jobs in 10 years that didn't exist the day you were in school. So the idea that, reading chapter 6 and answering the questions at the end, and by the way, you can find those answers in the back of the book, right? That was not going to prepare you for anything other than a grade in that class. So how do I, educator, how do we prepare you for a world that is now, then and now, moving so fast, we don't know what it's going to look like. Guaranteed, we don't know what it's going to look like. So how do I get you ready for that? Right?
Yeah.
Being curious and being like, how do I, and being curious and being able to not answer the question, knowing what to do when you don't know what to do is those are the best skills we can prepare you for. If we can give you that, if we teachers can give you students that ability, what do you do when you don't know what to do? And how do you be curious about this thing that you've never seen in front of you? And that's the world you're going to move into. So what are we doing? And so how do you shape a school so that that's what your teachers do? And, that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
I mean, really,
One of the things,
if it's going to make sense, that's what you've got to do.
yeah, one of the distinctions I see too, and I've had some folks talking about this, is so there's a huge difference also between a question from a teacher that has a single correct answer or a single correct answer I'm looking for, right? So on the test, that 2-point question has one answer. You either get it right or you get it wrong, right? Versus that open-ended question that's basically the teacher challenging the students and saying, I'm not sure what the right answer to this is. What do you think? Which goes back to your original statement about you liked school because it made you think, right?
Right.
So again, this is, I think, where some of us are trying to get to with saying education needs to change, right? Because those are the skills to be able to, on that kind of creativity that says, oh, the answer could be anything, right? So let me really free my mind and imagine any possible solution, right? Challenge me to find the best answer, right? Or the best answer
Right.
for me, which may not be the
Right.
same as the best answer for you contextually. And so, but allowing the kids to understand that there could be multiple solutions to this problem, and your solution may be great for you, and somebody else's solution is actually better
Right.
for them, even though it's different. Yeah.
You know, I think as you were speaking, I think part of the reason why I ended up in education, well, part of it was just mistake, like what? But part of it was I think I got really lucky along the way. And I had some teachers, not so much when I was young, like elementary and but I had a wonderful couple of teachers in high school. And I remember a college professor. I was taking a class on, I don't remember, it was American history, it was the presidency or something. and and it was like an exam, and most of it was short answers, and there were essays at the end. And I was lucky enough to have a teacher who would have an open mind about an angry, arrogant kid who took this test and just, so, it was a short answer question. Who's this quote from? Right? I mean, who said this, or who is likely to have said this? It was a short answer: A, B, C, D. Jefferson, Patrick Henry, who the hell knows? And so I wrote at length in the margins and on the back about why I think the answer was this. And and I also wrote, what's backwards about this is that the content of the quote is what's important. But you're saying what's important is who said it.
Yeah.
And a teacher called me in, and did I do well? I don't know if I did well. I thought I was in trouble or something. And he said, you were right. I like, it doesn't matter who said that, whether it was Jefferson or Patrick Henry. Really, it's about what they said. It was like a paragraph long. And so I think, those little things that happened along the way in my education from educators who were really awake in some way that other teachers, at least in my life, had not been, really affected me, because it was, and that's another
Yeah.
thing I think that motivated me. School really kind of pissed me off. And I
Yeah.
was, in some ways, I was allowed to be pissed off. And that was pretty good.
Yeah.
That was
Well, that's
pretty
good.
good.
Yeah, I actually had one of those interactions too, but mine was kind of a different outcome. I still remember this class. It was an English class, and we had to read some book, or I think it was a book, and then we had to write something about, what we felt about it. I think it was a particular area of the book or topic there
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
had to write about. And I wrote this paper that I was really proud of, because I had really done some kind of deep thinking, trying to figure out what was the author really trying to tell us without telling it to us directly, right?
Right.
So I interpreted this in my own way, and was very pleased that, I had taken the time to really articulate what I felt from this thing. And then I got the paper back, and I'd gotten a D. And the teacher explained to me, you got a D because your conclusion about this was wrong.
It was wrong.
I didn't come to the same conclusion that he wanted me to come to after reading it. And I remember being really angry with him, but it also kind of flipped this switch in my brain. I was in middle school, and I remember it kind of flipped a switch in my brain that said, if you want to get through school, don't
Yeah.
think, give them what they want.
Right.
Right? Try to figure out what the teacher wants for an answer, whether you agree or whatever. Just go through the motions, because getting a decent grade keeps you safe at home, and keeps you out of trouble,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
and you get to progress, which gets
Right.
me out of here. Right. Last thing I
Right.
want to do is
Right.
repeat this and have the same
Oh
teacher
my
again
God.
for another year. Can you imagine? So yeah, so you learn to play the game. And the game was, tell them what they want to hear. right? Give them the one answer they're looking for. Don't be creative.
Right.
So,
Exactly. Yeah.
so yes,
Yeah.
to Sir Ken Robinson's, stuff. If you follow any of his writings,
Absolutely.
yeah, we beat the creativity and curiosity out of kids in the way we tend to do that schooling. So,
It's true. And it's hard to find teachers, it's hard to find teachers who walk in like that, but it's really hard also to find teachers who walk in and are willing to open up their minds to the possibility. Left to their own devices, frequently teachers teach the way they were taught, and that's not
yes.
usually good.
Exactly. Well, that
So,
goes back to my earlier point about this suggestion that teachers teach because they were good students, right? The
mm,
system worked for them. So the
right,
system isn't broken in their
right,
mind, right? It worked for me.
right,
I loved it. I was very successful, and so I became a teacher to replicate what I experienced, right?
right,
Which
exactly.
for 90% of the students may not
Yeah,
work very well, not as
yeah.
well as
I
it
used to
worked for
tell
you. Yeah.
I used to tell teachers that came to work at the school, well, forever.
Yeah.
Look, if you're not failing in your efforts to teach, if you're not failing 40, I was overstating, but
Yeah.
40 to 50% of the time, you're probably not doing your job. We hired you. I used to take a lot of time before I hired a teacher, I did a lot of observation and, do,
Yeah.
do demo lessons and things like that, and have conversations like this and see where they
Yeah.
could go. And because, so I would say, look, it took you a long time to get here. And so now you got so be creative, try stuff. Come on, try stuff, right? Because if you're not trying and some stuff's not going to work, as long as you're not damaging the kids, then but you need to be pushing the edge.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Not everybody,
exactly.
and not everybody lasted. Not everybody lasted
Yeah.
because
Not
that wasn't,
everybody is, yeah, cut from that cloth, but
no,
that's okay.
exactly.
That's okay
Yeah, no,
too,
exactly.
but at
Right,
least be a follower, I guess, right? So if somebody else is innovating and they're
right.
trying stuff and they had four kind of train wrecks and then they hit it and oh, this works, right? Now let's share that and they
And
yeah,
and the
yeah,
and the willingness to create assignments that a student could take, sort of make infinitely deep, right? They could stop here, but they could go further if they were
yeah,
so inclined. So to actually craft something so that there wasn't this right answer, and you could just kids could keep going. And
yeah,
so that was a tough nut to crack.
yeah. All right, talk to me just a little bit before we wrap up here on
Yeah, sorry
your
about that. Yeah.
podcast. No, your podcast,
Ah,
Curiosity Invited. So you describe it as a classroom. So
yes,
okay,
it's not a classroom I want. That's the genesis for it, right? So
okay,
I moved I moved for complicated reasons that I won't go through, but the fires chased us out of Northern California. I was
okay,
teaching at UC Santa Cruz. After I left the school, I got a part-time gig at UC Santa Cruz, or teaching in the economics department. I'm not an economist, and
do you ever
and
teach anything you actually know? Yeah.
no,
Okay,
no, because
yeah,
I teach things I can be curious about.
there you go.
So I landed in rural Wyoming, but not the Jackson Hole, Wyoming that people know about, but the farm ranch country in northwestern Wyoming, and and I was a local college, so I was gonna, oh, good, I can teach part time at a local college. Well, their enrollment was going in that direction, and so they were laying off teachers, and
Oh,
I love the classroom. I really do. I love teaching and watching kids' eyes open up, and they get excited about stuff. So I was sitting around and I think, well, there is this technology out there, and this is like the age of the podcast, right? Everybody over 40, every white male in the world is over the age of 40 seems to have one. So okay, I'll try. And,
okay,
so it's classroom-ish. In other words, because I'm talking with people about things that I either think are interesting or important, or every once in a while it's both, and that's
Yeah.
gold mine. And I try, not always successfully, try to have it be like you're doing right now. We're having a conversation rather than, it's not an interview, it's not a Q and A and Q and A and Q. And it takes me to places, I mean, the podcast that's up this week or last week was a woman who has spent 20 plus years photographing bees that she got really interested in and did it and she knows so much about bees. And now I know a lot more, and other people may. It's right.
Yeah.
So, and then this week is a long conversation with somebody about AI, who is in that world, and so it's, in some ways it's more of a classroom for me, and hopefully for the people who watch. And then every once in a while you get lucky, and like, I don't know why, because the algorithm, as if there's one, the algorithm in the world is idiosyncratic and quirky. So a podcast I did 2 years ago and had about 2,000 views, just went viral. And so now there's 600,000 views. Like, what? And then next week's will be crickets. Who knows?
Had
So
some of that experience too. Yes.
yeah,
I
exactly.
haven't had anything go hundreds of thousands, but yes,
it's crazy.
it's crazy. Yes, how that works.
Yeah.
But it does strike a chord with me, because I will admit, so I started this podcast not because I'm an expert in innovation and education, but because I'm curious, right? And I wanted to learn more. And so I've been more blessed probably than anybody else by this podcast,
Yeah,
because I've
I
gotten to
get
talk
it.
to so many interesting,
Fabulous.
people who are doing fabulous things all over the
We should
planet.
do a podcast together.
We could. I
Yeah.
would come on your show. There must be something interesting and important I could talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was thinking of doing a podcast where there are two hosts
The two
and
of us
somebody.
together.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
Well,
could make
you
something
live
like
in
that
it.
work.
You live in
Yeah.
a time zone that is
A little difficult. Yes.
contraindicated for my time zone.
It is, yeah, it is pretty topsy-turvy. It's 10 p.m. here now.
Oh
Yes.
my God, I'm keeping you up.
No, it's fine. I'm
And I've
enjoying
got
this.
wake up eyes.
That's right.
Because
Yeah. Do
it's
you have your coffee yet? Yeah.
absolutely. I gulped it down right
Oh,
before I got on.
good. Good. All right. Well, any last words? Anything you would like to
No, I'm
share
really
with the
glad that you're
audience?
doing this. I'm really glad you're doing this podcast. I think it's, gosh, the world frequently needs better education. Better in the sense of, what is it that really makes sense for and to stop treating people as if one size really fits all.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's lots of things we have in common, but there's so many ways in which we are all unique. So why would we, especially kids, why do we try to make them cookie cutter
Yeah.
kids? They're not, it's never going to work.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
They're going to be. I mean, I hope it's never going to work.
Yeah.
I mean, so
Okay.
anyway.
I
Yeah.
absolutely agree. Yes. In fact, I had Katie Novak on recently. I did a episode with her, and we call her the queen of universal design for learning. And so she's written like 16 books on the topic.
I know the name. I don't think I've read any of those books.
I haven't. Yeah. Yeah. But she's fabulous. But that's basically what universal design for learning is right? Make it work for everyone, not cookie cutter, say, you're an eighth grade chair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sitting in an eighth grade room.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Indeed.
All right, David. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. This has been, honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect from this conversation. I didn't know where I was going to go with it. Yes, clearly you didn't know where we were going to go either, which made it even more fun. But it's been great.
Thank you. Thanks for being willing to spend time. I appreciate it, and be curious together, which is great.
Yes.
So, all right.
I love David's analogy of students being treated like eighth grade chairs that can only be in an eighth grade classroom. Putting students first and creating programs like Spectrum for neurodivergent students, empowering teachers to take risks and try new things is what made David an effective school leader, and I'm sure changed the lives of many students and teachers over the years. I do this show so I can share stories like David's. I'm Eric Byron. Thanks for listening to the Education Innovators podcast, and thanks to all those education innovators out there. You are making a difference.